From Lena Black Gemara, we are up to now the second Pedic of Masechta Shavuos, and we haven't yet really learned anything about Shavuos. We've digressed, and interesting, we don't have in other places where the first two prokim have total digression. We're going to learn. We're learning about the laws of Tumah, and we had the Mishnah said Yediyas HaTumah. It says that the Tumah, the halamas of Tumah Shtayim Shein Arba, the two principal ones and two offshoots. The principal ones are you knew you were Tameh, you forgot you were Tameh, and you entered the Beis Hamikdash, and then you remembered later. You knew you were Tameh, you forgot you were Tameh, you ate kachim, and you remembered later. So that's two principal ones. So it's all about you being Tameh. And the two offshoots are that you never forgot you were Tameh, but you forgot that this was Kodesh. You knew there was Kodesh, you forgot, and then you remembered. You knew this was Beis Hamikdash, you forgot, and then you remembered. So that's the additional form. So now this Mishnah will delineate that further. Says the Mishnah, Yediyas HaTumah Shtayin Shehein Arba. We're on Daf Yudalid Amar Aleph, the new Pedic. Yediyas HaTumah. This is basically the wording of our first Mishnah. Shtayin Shehein Arba. So Nitma, you became Tamei. The Mishnah explains out. B'yod, and you knew. B'nelma Memenu, you forgot you were Tamei. HaTumah, you forgot that you were Tamei. V'zachas HaKodesh, but you knew this is a carbon, but you forgot that you were Tamei. Or that's the principle. What's the offshoot of that principle? You knew you were tummy. You still knew you were tummy, but you forgot that this was a carbon. You remember the tumah, or menu. So that's the offshoot. The offshoot is that you knew you were tummy, but you forgot that this was kodesh. Or you forgot both. You forgot that you were tummy. You forgot that the kodesh. And you did know, and remember, in order to be chayiv a carbon, obviously you have to remember afterwards. I told you last time on Machlek is whether is it because practically speaking, why would you bring a carbon if you don't remember afterwards, or is it because that's the chiyuv? The chiyuv is when you remember afterwards. That's what triggers the chiyuv. Bottom line is a special carbon called oil commensurate. Only a few averas they have the special carbon, not a chatas kavua, a fixed animal, but oil goes up and down. That's two of them. What's the other two? The other two is where nitma you became tummy, the yada you knew, v'nelma mimenu to me forgot tuma, the zachar es hamigdash. So that's talking about kodesh. Now we're going to learn the exact same thing regarding mikdash. Same thing. You were tummy, you forgot you were tummy, you entered Beis Hamikdash, then you remembered. Or you were tummy and you remember you were tummy, but you forgot that this is Beis Hamikdash. Nel memenu v'zachar mikdash, nel memenu mikdash v'zachar, or you forgot the offshoot is you forgot that this is Beis Hamikdash, but you knew you were tummy. How is that possible? How is that basically? Nelem mimenu ze b'zeh, or you forgot both. Say you tummy mikdash, but nichel mikdash v'lo yodi did know. Mishiyatzi yod. The main thing is you have to know when you worked out. So this is two. The principal ones are you forgot you were tummy and you walked the Beis Hamikdash. You forgot you were tummy, walked and you ate kodesh. And the two offshoots are you knew you were tummy, but you forgot that this is kodesh. Forgot this is mikdash. Okay. Now we continue. Which part of the Beis Hamikdash do we say that you're chayiv? Carbon if you did b'shegit. Only when you get karis, and where's that? Echad hanichnas lazor. If you walked into the courtyard, echad hanichnas the teisef. Not only the courtyard, but the addition. If they expanded the courtyard, and we had in the beginning Sanhedrin how that's done, how you expand your shalayim, how you expand the courtyard. The Mishnah here will repeat it and actually add something didn't say there. And if you went into teisef lazor, if it's done the right way, it's mamish like the Beis Hamikdash, and all the dinim apply there. You're not allowed to add to the shalayim or alo azodas or to the courtyards to give it the kedusha, the right kedusha. Ella, you need the following criteria. You need a melech to be involved, a king. You need a navi. You need the urim v'tumim, and you need the sanhedrin shoshim ve'echad. The sanhedrin said you want. Probably in time maybe in time melech, whatever it was. But we have it. We know from the Mishkan how did it make sanctify the Mishkan? You had Moshe Rabbeinu there, and Moshe Rabbeinu was in the Gemara later. Actually, he was a kohen and he was a navi. Moshe Rabbeinu was a navi and a melech. Adam was a kohen, and some say that Moshe Rabbeinu represents the 71 Sanhedrin as well, or there was Pacha Sanhedrin. In the Mishnah Sanhedrin, remember that long Mishnah on the bottom of the page, it doesn't mention all these extra ones. It just says you need the Sanhedrin Sheva Echad. Remember, but over there, that Mishnah is mainly focusing on how many Sanhedrin how many judges do you need for each particular case? For Gzelu B'Chavalos, you need only 3, and so on. Then we say here you need 10. and here you need 23, and here you need 71. So there, we're not out to tell you how to expand Azara. We're more out to tell you when you use this number of Sanhedrin and when, judges of Shoftim, when you use that many Shoftim. So you can't ask a question, how come it gives different criteria? When the very bottom of the page, we're learning, basically the first part of the mission just reiterates what we did in the first page about the Yudea Satuma, how it works. And now we're saying that if anywhere you walked into the base of Migdash, even the Azara, and even was expanded, it was done the right way, it's the same thing applies. That you forgot you were tummy, you walked in, all these dinim of chorus, or you get a carbon over. It says in how else what else do you need to expanding? Uvishte toidus. We're going to see in the Gemara later that even though it says b'shtei toidus, it means the chalos that come with the toidus. It means the two chalos come with the toidus. We'll soon see how that's done. Uvishir, the song, and song. That's how when you want to show where it's a happy moment, you sing. Ubezdin mahalchi, and Bezdin go the shtei toidas achareihen. The two toidas follow Bezdin, and then the Chol Yisrael achareihen, but they didn't follow them. Then it continues. Hapnimi is the inner. We'll see. We're talking about the chalas of toida and why, and which chalas dafke the chametz. We're dafke using the chametz, which are the largest, because the chametz has the same amount of flour as the three other. There's four different kinds of Israeli that you do. Three of them are matzah, and one of them is challah. And the amount of flour that you do for the chametz is equal to the amount of flour used for all three matzahs. That's what these are called. These are the big ones. Haprimi is necheles v'achitzoyin nisrefes. The inner one, we'll see more later. Machlek is what exactly it means. The inner one is eaten, and the outer one gets burnt. Of these chalas. If you didn't follow this modus operandi, you're not chayiv. You're not chayiv. It's not considered treated as the azara. Now, what happens? Nitma ba'azara, you became tamei in the azara, and you knew you were tamei. Benelma mimenu tumma, you became tamei in the azara, but you forgot that you were tamei. V'zachor es hamigdash, and you remember, let's say, for example, that this is the base hamigdash. Right? This is what we did before. You knew you were tummy, you forgot, and then you walked the Beis Hamikdash. Nelim heimen Hamikdash v'zachatum, and the offshoot was that you knew you were tummy, but you forgot that this is Beis Hamikdash. Or Nelim heimen zevazeh, you forgot everything. Now, how long do you have to be? And while you forgot, and we're going to hold you responsible, you got to be in carbon. How long? What happened? You walk straight out. You're not going to be chayiv. So only if you either bow down, or even if you didn't bow down, you were there long enough that you could have bowed down. There was a shia, a pause. You're talking about in the case you didn't know. You bowed down. Or a bigger chiddush, you could have walked out through a shortcut. You decided to take the long way out. So you spent extra time for no reason. Chayiv. In all of these cases, the chayiv are carbon oil of the In other words, in this case of Arucha, even though you didn't pause a minute, you walked straight out. Because you spent extra time, unnecessary time, you're chayiv. And Rashi says that these are all lachamash these times. But if you went through big tzara potter, if you didn't bow down, you didn't pause, you walked straight out, you are potter. Yeah. Then he says it. Zu hi mitzvahs aseisha b'migdash. We're going to learn later on. There's a mitzvah say that for someone who's tummy, he has to leave the machen, and then we know different depends on if you're mitzvah, it has to be out of 3 machanes, a zova out of the 2 machanes, and a tummy mess or even the mess itself only out of 1 machane. But Moshe Rabbeinu took with him in machane leviyah the Atzam Yosef. So therefore we know that that's how it works, and there's a mitzvah say to leave the machane. And we say over here, she'ein chayav. We learn more soon after she'ein chayavin Allah. That if a bezdin, for example, makes a mistake in Hayrah, you bring a special carbon called a par, helam davash tzibur. Or if a kohen gadol makes a personal error in judgment, he brings his own special par. But if the mistake was about this, for example, say, you can take the long way out. If let's say that's their paskin, there's no problem, which is wrong. Then they don't bring that special carbon. Why? When do they bring this special carbon? Only if if an individual does it, you bring a chatas kavua. And now the bezin did it, so they bring the par, helam davar shel tzibur. But over here, since the individual brings a carbon oiliyated, the bezin does not bring that special carbon. The Mishnah in Hoydis doesn't explain, if the detail just says that this is not saying the Mikdash. Now we're explaining what it means. It refers to what. Okay, what's a typical example of a say where the bezin is chayiv? Because the Mishnah there says you're not chayiv and say b'mikdash, but you're chayiv and say the nida. What's going on there? I say, for example, if the bezin made a mistake in her in which area? Let's say he was mishamish with his wife, she was tired. But Amr Allah in the middle, she said, "Hey, it's Macy. I'm becoming tamei." And what do you do? His reaction is upidish. Miyad. His reaction was, to go to step aside. Chayiv. If because he's having a no, he should have waited until it becomes limp. And if the Sanhedrin paskin in this case, no problem, jump straight out, then they will bring a pot helm of the. But you have to ask an interesting question. Not in this case. Not he's pulling Sanhedrin over here, obviously. Generally, but the Avi. So why talk about neither? Any mitzvah say the Chachamim, the Sanhedrin paskin wrong, they bring a pot helm of the. It seems the contrast of neither is it's exactly the same thing. On neither is you went in beheaded, and then suddenly you became also in middle, and how you deal with it when you're going out. What's the case of all the Migdash? You went in beheaded, and you became tummy in the base of Migdash. I still don't understand exactly how you became tummy in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. How you become because we're talking about here, you have to have certain only tumah. The only tumahs that you have this din of oil and all that is a tumah that a nozis megalechula. A tumah is nozis megalech, which is an abba tumah. Somebody became tummy of an abba tumah. Not a personal zova, you became a zova. Yeah. Where do you get a sheds in the Kodesh HaKadoshim? Somebody in the holy, nobody there. That if he died and we schlep him out, but it's not the Kohen Gadol who's in it. We're talking about the Kohen Gadol. Sorry? Yeah, it's a question. Yeah. So, but in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, I'm sure they maintain the Kodesh HaKadoshim. I'm sure the night before they came in and they checked it out because it's a big day in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. We learned from Tzachta that the maintenance people would come in from time to time to clean the place up. And the question was, they were blindfolded so they shouldn't see, but they did. Yeah, and they were blindfolded. Anyway, obviously it could happen. Then he was right. Rabbi Eliezer, now the Mishnah brings a machleki, Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Shmuel, and we also bring Rabbi Eliezer, and the Gemara later on will explain how Rabbi Eliezer differs from Rabbi Kiva. But if you remember, in the beginning of the Sechta, we learned that there's a machlekes. If the din of carbon oil is limited only to the two principal ones, which is that you were tummy and you forgot. What about if you were tummy, you remembered, but you forgot that this is a kodesh? It's not so pashut. We're learning the whole time. It's the same. How Mishnah said in the beginning that it's an extension. We remember if we concluded that would be the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva holds it only is limited to the fact that if you were tummy, you forgot. It's Rabbi Shmuel who adds that. But then we had a problem. How can the author of the Mishnah be Rabbi Shmuel when it comes to the Nedarim? It's the other way. Shavuos, Rabbi Shmuel holds only the future. So we said it's a Rebbe that he paskins here like Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva. So the Gemara here, Rabbi Eliezer says, Hasheret, it says in the pasuk, you touch a sheret of an elemenu, al helem sheret chayiv, ain't a chayiv al helem migdash. You're only chayiv that you didn't know you became tamei, but you're not chayiv if you knew you were tamei, but you didn't know about the base migdash. That's what Rabbi Eliezer says. Come on, Rabbi Kiva, and the Gemara will have a problem with this. We'll see later what's the difference. The nelem imenu, it says he forgot who tamei. So what did he forget? That who tamei. Al helem tumah chayiv and chayiv al helem migdash. Again, it's saying the same thing, just a different basis. Rabbi Shmuel says, it says twice v'nelim. We had two different shots in Rabbi Shmuel. It says twice v'nelim, shtei pamim. What do you mean twice? One you forgot tumah, another one you forgot the kodesh. The chayv alam tumah al mikdash. Says the Gemara, Amar Papa Labaya. How can you tell me shtayim shehin arba, shtayim shehin sheish havit? You knew you were tummy, you forgot you were tummy. Okay, that's two, right? So you knew and you forgot, and then you remembered. That's two. Then you knew you were tummy, you never forgot, but you forgot that this is kodesh. It's kodesh. You knew the kodesh, you forgot, and you remembered. That's already another two. You knew it was migdash, you forgot there was migdash, you remembered. That's another two. So you have a total of six. So why does the Mishnah say shtayim shena? Because right now we're learning that the shtayim is the idea in the beginning and the at the end. So if you count the ideas, no, so the six. You knew you were tummy, you forgot you were tummy, and then you came out, and then you remembered. Then your ideas had six. So if you make that, if you're going to think it's ideas, you should ask me it's 8, because you knew you were tummy, you forgot you were tummy, you remember tummy, and you walked to the base of English. You knew you were tummy, you forgot, and you ate kodesh, and you remember. So there's 4 there plus 4. The time to have the ikut tumah the kodesh with tumah the migdash, even though you in both cases you forgot tumah tchila v'seif. So the Papa said holocaust, that didn't bother me. Shame tumah achazi, it's the same thing. You knew you were tumah, you forgot, and you did something wrong. B'shas ma'aser kodesh migdash. I don't count that as separate case. It's one case. But if the tumah is all about the kodesh, you forgot, or you're all about the migdash, you forgot. That's separate cases. Become should have a 6. But a papa la'ilam tam has 8. Arba kamaisa, we don't count the ideas at the end. We only count the ideas at the front. So you have now 4. You knew you were tummy, you forgot your tummy, you walked in Fedish. So the first idea. You knew your tummy, you forgot your tummy, and you ate and you walked in Beis English. So that's another idea. And the same thing with you knew your tummy, you forgot English. I said, which ones do we count? About Kamaisa, the first ones, the Lemaisa, the carbon. You can never bring a carbon on its own before you knew you had ED in the beginning. It's the ED at the end that triggers the carbon. Like a Kachashi, Abba Basraisa, the Mais, the carbon Kachashi, the last 4 he counts. Or the Ikadam, another way around. I'm gonna pop it. La'ilam Tam, there's 8. Baba Kamaisa, the less the B'chala the first 4, which you don't find anywhere in the Taita. It's unique. Where else in the Torah but table fats? You had to know before that it was safe before you and you forgot? No. You ate table fats, you had no idea, and then tomorrow you were told you ate table fats by mistake. Okay, you bring a carbon. The only place that you need a D in the beginning and the outset, and then you forgot is by tumor. These will hold go like a chashiv. These 2 opinions are the first one says that you're not bringing a carbon, but the first you only bring a carbon at the end. So is that correct? So that's the machlekes. If you remember like this, is the reason, there's no question you cannot bring a carbon unless you remember it at the end. Is the reason because practically how you can bring a carbon if you don't know? Or is the reason because halachically? If the reason because practically, so what's really machayiv the carbon is the first idea. Navas, you can't bring it because you didn't know. So that's the second answer. But the first answering about is no. The reason why you don't bring it at the end is because you're not chayiv a carbon. You only chayiv a carbon if the idea at the end, but tonight that is in the beginning. So then the first 4 don't bring you to a carbon. It's the second 4. That's the machlekes, the 2 answers. The Gemara, this very nakuda that I told you about last time. Maybe. Right? Boy, ask an interesting question. Now, what happens? You totally forgot the laws of tumah. Not that you forgot that you were tumah. You totally forgot the laws of tumah. Wow, we must ask what's happening. Hey, what are we talking about? He didn't know. He said it's tumah. It's fardei tumah. He knows a sheretz tummy, but he doesn't know the difference between a tzvadei and a sheretz. He doesn't know what's tummy and not tummy. Zil korabirabu. Every kid in the school knows, and therefore, as the Rishonim say, you should have asked. Since you know there's a concept of tumah, and you know you touch something, you should ask Rav, did I become tummy or not? Inexcusable. Taisus wants to know, interesting. Taisus wants to know, if he knew, we have a concept we had before. Remember, we learned that anything that you learned in the school that's good enough, that's considered good enough of idea. So if it's a good enough idea, so what do you mean? What do you have to say that you could just say that base it abba? Remember, we learned before the Rebbe holds that if something that is taught in school and b'shas ma'isa, you knew about it, but it just didn't click that this is real. So why do you have to say? Yeah, I'm sure you learned the Matuna. So what do you have to say that still Karberahu? We'll go ask questions. So Taisus says, very interesting. Taisus says in school you learn words without pictures. So you learned that a tzav is tzav is tummy, but a tzvadei is tight. I have no idea what a tzav is. I remember Yechidas wants to ask a friend of mine. Wants to ask a friend of my brother, what are you learning? Kid was only like 8 years old. Said, what are you learning? Said, learning Shosh and Agach Zapora. So the Rebbe said to him, what exactly is a Shosh and what's a Zapora? Do you know the difference? No idea. Same thing here. You learn all these things in Gemara. You have all these coins. We learn Masechet Chulin, or we learn Treifus. You know all these words. The moment they bring out a lug, you say, "No." So what is it? Oh, you don't know. Same thing. Unless you go to the zoo. You go to the zoo to study. Okay, tell you what, right? You ever do a sheretz? He knew sheretz. He knew the laws of sheretz. There's no problem with Kol Beirav. He knew if he touches, it becomes tamei. But going to Naga Bekadoshi, touch such a small amount like a lentil, the size of a lentil, he had no idea. Kadoshi metamle metame. They didn't teach him these details in school. And usually you have to have a chashuva thing. From everything else you do in Teda, you have to have a kazais when you have to be chashuv. So you had no idea. You couldn't imagine that tiny lentil should be a problem. And therefore, it's considered that you forgot to his tummy. So the question is, so what's the public question? Mike, keeping the other metameshes, by the way, we knew the concept is yidihi. Is that called the idea? And therefore, if he forgets and then remembers, he brings the carbon. Precisely this particular case, you had no idea that you became tummy. There was never really an idea. It was never a yediyah in the first place. How far do we take it? We say yediyah. You have to mamish know, or just know in algemein. Generally you know, and you should have asked. You should have asked. Says the Gemara. Why Rabbi comes along and asks. Remember, Rabbi was once a bubble, and he left. He went to Yisrael, and ever since he got to Yisrael, he couldn't stop denigrating. Exactly. Why Rabbi Ben Bubble Shol Yisrael. A person from Bubble went to Yisrael, and he never went to the Beit Hamikdash before. The Nel men of Makkah had no idea what Beit Hamikdash is. Ma, what's it in then? What's it in then?
Is that a helim or is that
Is actually he had no he's actually a yediyah in the helim, or he's never yediyah in the first place. He had no idea where the place of the mikdash is. Says the Gemara, and now remember, we're talking about a case that you knew you would tell me, you just forgot the mikdash. Not everyone agrees that that is a carbon over the yedis. So we see it. Aliba, who are you asking according to? Eleb Aliba Rabbi Kiva hosts. Remember, we had another thing. We had Rabbi Shmuel before, early in the Gemara. We'll talk about it soon. Again, Rabbi Shmuel holds he doesn't agree with Rabbi Kiva that you need a yediyah in the beginning to trigger a carbon. He holds that even if you had no yediyah at all, if you went into the base of mikdash, ate a carbon, and then you realize you were telling me you still bring a carbon out of the yediyah. Rabbi Kiva is the one who says you need a yediyah before. So my question: Aliba the man. Remember, Rabbi Kiva also holds, just like in our Mishnah, that if you forgot to this base of mikdash, you don't bring a carbon. It's only if you forgot that you were tummy. So who are you asking according to? Rabbi Kiva, the boy Rabbi Kiva said that you do need yediyah in the beginning, so you're asking whether this is called yediyah or not. Rabbi Kiva said in the Mishnah clearly that if you knew you were tummy, you forgot the base of mikdash, doesn't count. And Rabbi Shmuel, the Mechayv al-Migdash, and if goes going to Shmuel hold, you Chayv al-Migdash, Rabbi Shmuel hold, you don't need yediyah in the beginning. Who cares? This follows Rebbe that says that, you remember in the Mishnah passing like both. The boy yediyah b'tchili holds on the one hand you do need yediyah like yediyah like Rabbi Kiva, but he also holds umechayev al helam migdash. He holds like Rabbi Shmuel yechayev also on helam migdash. But he says yediyah is beis rabbi shmo yediyah. If something that when you were a kid in school you learned is called a yediyah. And Rashi learned before that so when you did your thing, you knew that it was tamei. But you just it didn't click. You knew what you knew everything. You just how many times you learn theory and then that's what it is. Sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't. And this is the question. Keeping the other can make it by since he generally knows the base of the world is good enough. I did look in the because there's no teku. So Teshari wants to know why, if you're talking about the Bisman, there's no base of Migdash, obviously. Why talk about Ben Bubble? What about Ben Yisrael? So Teshari couldn't imagine that people at Yisrael didn't go visit the site of the base of Migdash. He said, people at Yisrael no. And yet, I just heard somebody, a general was speaking somewhere in Mexico on Pesach, and he was lamenting the fact that a lot of Israelis have no idea who they're fighting for. And he had 800 troops under him. He took a survey. How many went to Yerushalayim in their life? They were 18, 19-year-olds, boys and girls. 400 out of the 800 never went to Yerushalayim. Then he asked the 400 who did go to Yerushalayim, how many of you went to the Kaisel? Assuming they all went to the Kaisel. Half never went to the Kaisel. No idea. So here you can have a Matthias. But nevertheless, at least 200 did. But Ben Bubble, they wouldn't. How do you know? How do you know Azar is also? And how do you can add? Just like Hashem said to Moshe, looks like everything I showed you. I showed you as tablets on Mishkan, the form of the Mishkan. There's tablets called Caleb, the form of the Caleb. Then it says the Chain Tasu, do this in the future. So clearly giving a license, opening that you can expand, you can do things. So not only in the future, based on Mishkan and everything else, but wherever you build a Mishkan, because they build Mishkans everywhere else. The Chain Tasu do the same thing. And when Mechitasu, the same way you did it here, because Moshe Rabbeinu, as Ash explains, was a king. We'll learn more as Vachim. Moshe Rabbeinu was a king. Moshe Rabbeinu was a Navi, right? And then we have Adam was a Kohen Gadol. You had the Sanhedrin there, and you had the Rotum there. So Mechitasu, that's how you do it in the future as well. You need all these ingredients. Exactly. But everything else was passing. The time to go, okay, love the Chain Tasu, the way you did it here, do it there. Excuse me. Must have that's a question, but we don't do the same way. We learned and we all familiar. It says Kol HaKelim Sha'asa Moshe Mishichasa Mikachas, and he just puts a little bit of oil on it, and that makes it clay shardis. But even if he didn't do any avodah with it, it's already holy. Beyond that, avodasan mechan chasan. It's only if you work with it in the base of Migdash in the Mishkan. Yeah, no, even if the Shem Mishcha existed in the future, if you have, even if you had Shem Mishcha until King Yehoshua took it away, you had it, but still the Kalim, only if you worked with it, did it become Kaddish. Otherwise, not Kaddish. No, what the Chain Tasu? Bye bye, neighbor Chain Tasu, whatever you did then, you should go on. And when shining Hashem, no, we have another pasuk. The Makro, it says in the pasuk, when Moshe finished saying the Mishkan, he put the oil on it, and he made it holy. It says in the pasuk, Vayimshechem, and he made it holy. Vayikadesh oisam. Why say again oisam? It's already a kaddish oisam. It's the pasuk spells out what he did. Why says oisam again extra? Tell you only the kelim became holy through the Mashiach. But everywhere else you need avodah. Oisam Mashiach. The pasuk clearly limits the Mashiach by kelim. Very much new. Ema oisam b'Mashiach l'dayris. Sorry, b'Mashiach and l'dayris. Oy b'Mashiach oy b'avodah. Maybe that only oil is sufficient. That's only then. But in the future, you have a Breda. Oil or avoid the haino or avoid the exclusive. Because on the other hand, it's the Chain Tasa, which means that Mashiach should still be involved. I want to pop on the clock. We have a pasuk, another pasuk which says you should take all the place. The shot is Asher Yisharsu Vamba Kodesh, that you will work with, serve you in the Kodesh. Hakosav Tolan Hakosav B'Shida. The Torah clearly says that what makes it Kodesh if you use it. So the Gemara says Hashta. So now you call it pasuk. So Hashta because I'm going to say so Oislamli. You told me a minute ago that there's a meat called Oisam. It's extra to tell you that the only time Mashiach is effective is the time Moshe Rabbeinu. Now you bring me another pasuk that shows Oisam that in the future you have to work with them to become Chaydish. So what do you need Oisam for? Why did they leave that as extra? The Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Ila because I'm going to Oisam. It wouldn't be for Oisam. I mean, I would have thought. It says the Chain Tasel which means use Mashiach, and then it says the Shor. So I would say, you know what? You have to do both. In the future, you need two steps to make it Kaddish. Hani the Mashiach, the only Mashiach is enough. But the Dayda is Mashiach Bavayda. The Kosovo, it says the Chain Tasim. Be it Rachman, the Torah says Oisam Mashiach, but Loila Dayda Mashiach. Then Mashiach, and not the rest. Okay, we'll stop over here. I'm seeing tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, 7:05. Okay, have a good day.